Bloomington Normal audiences have a rare treat in store on April 19th because Bob Newhart's going to be in town, and I have him on the line this morning. Good morning, Bob.
Hi, Ken. How are you?
Fine. Pleasure to talk to you. I have to tell you have my favorite show on TV these days.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
It is delightful.
I'm very happy with it. We finally, I'm happy with the cast, and I was very happy with last night's show. It was a pleasure to do and then to watch it last night.
I missed it last night.
It was, but you know, the Tommy and Mary and Julia and Peter Scolari and Larry Darrell, and it's fun to go to work because the writing has been, I think, real good this year, and
it is. It's delightful.
It's fun to work against those kind of people.
I talked to Peter Scolari, I guess it was last year.
Yeah.
And who was the one he replaced? The guy that had the cafe.
Well, Kirk. The character was Kirk.
Kirk. Yeah, I talked to him, and I can't think of his name right now.
Steve Campman.
Yeah, right, Steve.
That was unfortunate, and that's one of the tough things to do when you have to do it. And it certainly was no reflection on Steve. It was a character that we originally had in the pilot, and it just never quite developed.
Yeah.
It never quite rang true, you know. And we know there are a lot of those pathological liars out here in Hollywood, but apparently the rest of the country wasn't familiar with that type.
They're trying to.
I love Peter and Julia because they're the perfect yuppie couple. You know, they're just.
They're just suited for each other.
Millions of them out there. You know?
I particularly love the episode where you wound up in the stocks and were getting a nose scratched. I guess Darrell and Darrell.
With Jose Ferrer. That was funny. It's Larry Darrell and Darrell they become a generic term. You know, I mean, people write me and they say. We got 3 guys back in the shipping department we call Larry, Darrell, and Darrell, you know, or they say, send this to Larry, Darrell, and Darrell, and let's hope it never gets out of the building, you know.
Yeah.
So, but they're fun because they're very honest, you know. They're certainly not stupid. They're just very honest and trusting. And I remember that show you mentioned when I said $5 to
scratch my nose for $5.
Scratch my nose for $5. They took it literally, you know. They scratched my nose and handed me $5. So.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's tough keeping a straight face with them, you know, because the other two boys who are Tony Pappenfuss and John Volstead are wonderful actors, and they never get a chance to talk, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes us 2 or 3 takes to get. And whenever they walk in, they get applause from the studio audience. You know, we always.
You do that in front of a live show, don't you?
We do it, live audience on Friday night, yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, and it's maybe something that other people didn't even notice, but I know when the show first came on, it was videotaped. That was several...
Yeah. The very first year, we were videotaped, and that's because the costs of film were so exorbitant. But it was such a harsh look. Also, from the actor's point of view, the director is off in a booth somewhere, and he's a disembodied voice that comes out of the ceiling that you can't always understand. It's like listening to CB radio, you know. And so we went to film in the second year, and we're much happier with it. It's a softer look, and the director is right there on the floor, and he can say he can walk in and say, give you a line or something, and we can start shooting again rather than this control booth way off somewhere.
Yeah. For some reason, film is sort of, I forgot who said it, but they were comparing it to the proscenium versus the in-the-round kind of theater. It's sort of...
I think it goes back to, in the back of everyone's mind, and this is very technical, but I think tape is you always associate with sketch, you know, sketch comedy, and it's a much broader form of comedy, and that isn't the kind of comedy we were doing. And film, you associate with Mary Tyler Moore and I Love Lucy and those kind of shows, and it's a whole different kind of comedy.
Yeah. Well, it has a great look to it and a warm look to it. This is the ultimate compliment I think it can pay you because I've said it to the same kind of folks like Valerie Harper, people who were on the old Mary Tyler Moore show, or even Cheers, I Quit Your Show like that. Even if you particularly don't think that it's been a terrific week, and there usually are, they're right at the top, but you feel like you haven't wasted any time because you've spent time with people you like, and it's like all the characters are the kind of folks you wouldn't mind having as friends.
Well, you're right, and it's a very mysterious kind of mix of the right blend of people, and you don't always know you have it, but when you have it, you know it, you know. And We made some of our mistakes on the air, but as I said before, I'm really happy with the direction the show's going and the writing this year. And,
yeah. So many.
Our 5th year, and it seems like our 2nd year.
So many different. That all of a sudden, I remember the repeat one you had just recently about you played Pirate Pete.
Oh, Pirate Pete.
Those are great.
Wayne, yeah.
Great moments. You know, the fact of the matter is, the Newhart comedy started off on stage in front of a live audience, like you're going to be doing on the 19th.
That's true.
You did stand-up comedy way back then, and I imagine it's quite a bit different, isn't it? Of course, you have a lot of say in your own show, I would think, but it's still different when you're on stage by yourself versus.
Different. That's one of the reasons I'm going to Normal and some of the other places. I'm going to Canadian Expo. I mean, I started out in nightclubs, and while we do it in front of a live audience, the television show, you have to lock it in like Thursday. You can't suddenly change a word or wander off somewhere because the cameras would bump into each other and break lenses. So by Thursday, you've done all the experimenting, and you got to lock it in. Whereas, you know, when you go out on a nightclub floor or a concert hall or something like that, I did 3 days in January up in Canada. You're kind of in control. You can go from one thing to another. If something isn't working, you can pull something out you haven't done for a long while. I did the other day in front of the audience. I did King Kong, which I hadn't done it in probably 7 or 8 years, and it worked. And it was like running into an old friend. You know, it was.
It's always encouraging to find out that something still works, because not all comedy is timeless, right?
Well, I guess that's for somebody else to say.
Yeah, although I think your stuff is pretty timeless. There are those comedians that really go after the topical stuff. I'm not so sure all the Bob Hope material is good from one year to the next.
We stayed away from that on the show specifically for that reason, because we knew we were going to be, on the old show, we were going to be in syndication. And there's nothing worse than a Nixon joke in the middle of the afternoon. You know? It's just,
hey, you know, that reminds me. I saw that was another great show. But I saw something recently. I think they're doing it on Channel 9 in Chicago. Are they speeding that up just a little bit?
See, I haven't heard that.
I'm
not sure.
Unless it's my imagination, they're running the theme song faster at the end. No, I think it's so they can get more commercial time in or whatever. And even the pacing looks like it's just a little faster, maybe through the whole show. The pitch of the dialogue isn't any higher, but it seems like it's running faster.
You have me at a disadvantage. It's entirely possible. And once the local station gets it, there's not much you can do about it. You know, they do shave seconds here and there, and the first thing they do is take off the tag on every show, which was usually a little wrap-up scene that we did. And it's entirely possible they're running it a little faster to try to get another 30-second used car commercial in. You know?
Yeah.
I'm not knocking used car commercials, because I'm sure, you know, they're on the station there they're on
WGN in Chicago.
Well, no, I meant your station there. Right?
Oh yeah, we got them too.
WJBC. WJBC.
Yes. Let me ask you this, Bob. Is there a difference in how you look at the character between Bob on the old show and the character that you have on the new Newhart show?
Well, I said they're basically, I guess, the same person, and I guess 85% of it, they're 85% of who I am. The other 15% being a very sick, twisted kind of person that no one has ever seen, and hopefully no one ever will. You know, if I can keep it under control.
In some ways,
it allows me to. I myself would stop somewhere short of where the two characters go on. You know, I mean, I would say, wait a minute, I didn't have to be in this situation, and I'm not going to try to straighten it out. Whereas the two characters on the Bob Newhart show and the Newhart show, somehow or other wind up in the middle and say, okay, let me see if I can straighten this whole thing out, even though it's not of my making. So,
yeah.
There's a large part of me in those characters.
In some ways, it is a situation out of control, or almost like a Jack Benny, where Jack Benny never really popped any of the great lines. He was always the victim.
Well, Jack was the best. I would advise the young comedians, if they wanted to look at anybody, watch Jack Benny, because he was fearless. He would take as long as it took to say the line, and he would wait as long as it took to get the laugh. It was an incredible thing to watch.
Yeah, but I think it's a fair comparison to say what you're doing, because almost in your attitude, it's one of it's sort of standoffish in a way, isn't it?
Well, I've always had the feeling that the character on the albums and in the nightclub and on the two shows was a man who was absolutely convinced he was the last sane man left on Earth, and was trying to explain to everyone else that this was crazy, what was taking place. So if there's a thread, that may be what runs through the whole thing.
Okay.
I mean, I know the guy, the guard on the Empire State Building is telling it like it is to his boss at home. He's got this gorilla, and he's got to get him off the building, and it seems perfectly logical to him that he should have this conversation.
I like that. You mentioned that routine, and I come to think about the one with the monkeys and the typewriters, too.
Oh, boy, those are now 26 years old. They're 26 years old, because I recorded them in February of 1960, so...
Those are great, because Abe Lincoln's birthday rolls around or something like that, and, we pull out Abe Lincoln and Madison Avenue. Well, there's so many favorites. The bus driver instructor.
Well, I lived through that. I lived in Chicago, as you know, and at the end of the streetcar line and the bus line, and I used to see the conductors get off the buses, and they burn their transfers, and because the smell of the burning transfers kind of permeated the whole neighborhood. And until I was about 22, I thought the entire world smelled like burning transfers. I got in the Army and then realized that there is a life after death.
Yeah.
And but I used to see that. I used to see old ladies crossing the street, and they clang their bells, and these women would jump about 8 feet up in the air. So I was merely relating something I had seen.
Yeah, you had a different attitude, I guess, in order to bring that to light. I guess that's what they say a comedian does. There's a difference between a comic and a comedian. I'm not so sure what the difference is, but there is one.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was Benny or somebody once said. A comedian says funny things. A comic says funny things, and a comedian says things funny, and that seemed to be the distinction, which I guess is true. If you put them down on paper, as I've had to do sometimes when you record an album, you got to take the routine and put it down on a piece of paper, and it looks pretty sterile and unfunny when you look at it on a piece of paper. But then when you hear it, it's funny, but when it's kind of cold there, it's kind of frightening. You say, wait a minute, that isn't funny at all.
Yeah, I've talked to some actors who say the same thing about like an Alan Ayckbourn comedy. They say you look at it and you don't see any laughs in it at all. Yeah. You start doing it on stage, and they're there.
Yeah.
So
sometimes the audience is way ahead of you. I've had situations a lot of times when I didn't know what they were laughing at. I mean, they were laughing at something, and I'd come off, and then it dawned on me that they were ahead of me as far as the routine was concerned.
Uh-huh. You had hopes to be an accountant at one time, didn't you?
Well, I didn't have hopes to be. I don't think anyone hopes to be an accountant. You wind up an accountant, but you hope to be an attorney, or you hope to be a copywriter, but you don't hope to be an accountant. You kind of settle for that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wasn't an accountant. I worked for 2 years as an accountant, and I realized that I was not cut out for that kind of work.
Yeah, but it took an awful lot of nerve to go on stage for the first time, didn't it?
Yeah, but not. I was terrified. I must say, the first 3 or 4 years, it was just absolute terror. I just stared straight ahead, and I never looked right or left. And I said, "Now I'd like to do for you the driving instructor." And I finished that, and then I'd say, "Now I'd like to do for you the submarine commander." And then I'd do one more and say, "Thank you very much and good night," and I'd walk off. And absolute terror. I didn't know. It paid more than accounting, so I kept doing it.
Where was this? Places like Mr. Kelly's, I think, in Chicago?
Yeah, the great places. Yeah, Mr. Kelly's, the Tidelands in Houston, and the Hungry Eye in San Francisco. And
Mm-hmm. Now there are so many places opening up for young comics. It seems like for a while there wasn't anywhere to get started, and now they're everywhere. And maybe there's more comedians in the country than ever before. I'm not so sure.
It's true. I think, and there a lot of them are really well. Of course, Pryor, you can't even call Pryor a new comedian because he's been around for so long. But the stuff that he does is it's incredible to me. Gary Shandling, I find very funny. Jimmy Brogan, who does the Tonight Show and does warm-ups on our show from time to time, he's very funny.
You familiar with Stephen Wright?
Yes, I've seen him, yeah.
He's one of those guys that I thought, how in the world would he ever command anybody's attention? Because his whole character is so low-key.
But it's so outrageous what he says,
Yeah. But can't you imagine him in a noisy bar for the first time, unknown, and he's supposed to get up and get somebody's attention? You couldn't do it with that character, could you?
Not really, no. It's a little like the submarine commander, describing this absolutely horrendous trip that they've somehow gotten through, in these underplayed tones.
Yeah.
There are two guys I mess up all the time. One is Gary Shandling. Well, there are two of them anyway, and they're very good. They're good minds and funny stuff, and it's good to see. It's, you can never have too many comedians. I don't think so.
Yeah.
There's enough for everybody.
That's what the world needs is more laughs, and you're going to have an opportunity to have those with Bob Newhart on April 19th at Illinois State University's Braden Auditorium. It's two shows that night, one at 6:30 and one at 9:30. And also on the bill with you, Bob, the Jazz Members Big Band out of Chicago. So that's...
I understand that. Yeah, that's great. I did that once before in Ames, Iowa, and they had a jazz band at Ames, at the University of Iowa. And they were marvelous. Gee, they were super. They were just amazingly good.
Well, it ought to be a great evening, and I am looking forward to seeing you on April 19th.
Well, thank you, Ken. I'm looking forward to being there.
Bob Newhart. If you want tickets, I think they're still available by calling the box office or stopping by. Here's their number, 438-5444. Bob Newhart, a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, nice talking to you again.